we're not striving for perfection. We're striving for progress, and that we're imperfect. And through our imperfections, we can find progress. Welcome to the Complete Nutrition Podcast.
The podcast where we break free from the dieting cycle and explore sustainable, realistic ways to improve your health.
I'm Kylie, a registered dietitian with over 10 years of experience.
And I'm Spencer, and I've been eating food my entire life. And I happen to be a nurse.
Each week, we dive into the science, psychology, and strategies behind mindful eating and sustainable change.
Whether you're here to transform your relationship with food, learn how to make lasting lifestyle changes, or are simply curious about what true health looks like, you're in the right place.
We'd invite you to subscribe and tag along if you'd like to stop dieting and start living. This episode is brought to you by the mineral zinc. Zinc was named by the alchemist Paracelsus, who is actually the father of toxicology, and I love quoting him all of the time. He is the one that says that anything in excess can be toxic. Anyways, he discovered zinc, or he named it at least, in the 1600s, and it is the second most common mineral in the body, which what would you guess would be the first most common?
Water. That's not a mineral. You said mineral, not element.
A mineral.
And that's also
not an element.
Oh my gosh.
Try again.
Iron.
Yes, very good.
Nice.
Iron is the most common.
That one.
And it is actually in all enzymes, which I had a friend who was asking me, well, what is an enzyme? And she had listened to our micronutrient episode, and I didn't know what enzymes are made up of. So they're actually made up of elements, and they contain zinc in them. So zinc helps with 300 enzymes in metabolism, and it also helps with transcription for DNA. So
it's pretty essential.
And I remember, right, transcription is making DNA, and translation is making the mRNA
into proteins.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, transcription. Yeah, you're right. Transcription is making the mRNA. Anyway,
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So specifically, though, it is found in semen and in the prostate, and it's crucial for sexual reproduction development. And so in developing nations, sometimes people will be zinc deficient, and it will delay maturation and delay puberty. So you'll see young men who are 18, 19, 20 that should be grown, but actually look like they're 12 or 13 because they're deficient in zinc. And it can often be caused because of diarrhea. I think in the developing world, that's probably the major cause. Well, probably lack of in the diets and a lot of meat foods, but also diarrhea can cause a deficiency. And it can also cause thinning hair, and it impairs appetite, and it can also decrease immunity. So it is found in meat, seafoods, and then fortified foods as well.
What fortified foods have it?
Like cereal, like breakfast cereal.
It just adds whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
I think one of them. Is it only, like, if we don't find it in fortified foods, is the main source like from seafood is where you would get it?
From
and
meats.
That's like from meats. Did you say meats or seafood?
Yeah, meats and seafoods.
Oh, sorry.
Animal proteins and I guess fish protein.
They're an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes. Yeah. And if you are taking a supplement, it's actually only recommended to take a supplement for about a month because it competes with other minerals like copper and iron. And so it can lead to other deficiencies if you're taking a supplement for too long. So in short, if you have diarrhea, I usually recommend 50 milligrams of elemental zinc for a month, and then you should be good.
Nice. Cool. Good to know. So today, Kylie, we're talking about behavioral change, right? And how to create a mindset for sustainable change.
Yeah, I feel like when I meet with people or when I talk with people, most people will say, okay, I know what I need to do, but it's actually doing it and like the psychological piece that's the harder part. And I would agree. I think if you were to go to a dietitian, most of us are going to be saying, okay, you need to eat more vegetables or you need to be more active. But what it really comes down to is the application and more of the emotional, mental piece that can be the hardest. So I thought it would be good to talk about that today and talk about different strategies and different things that can be helpful if you feel like you're in that same boat.
Okay. I have a question, just a defining question before we really start. So we're talking about sustainable change. How would you define what is sustainable change exactly?
That's a good question. I think sometimes when we talk about nutrition, we're really used to doing these quick fixes, these diets. And I hear that all the time where people say, and I voice my concern. They tell me, I'm started on this diet and it's going really well. I know all of this is happening. That's positive. But it's really extreme. And I voice my concern and say, does this seem sustainable? Does this seem like you could do this for the rest of forever? And then many, if not most people feel like they don't intend to maintain those changes and then expect to maintain the outcomes while changing their habits. And that's unrealistic. And so sustainable change is making these small and consistent changes that are bite-sized and realistic that you can continue to do for the rest of forever. It's slower and you don't see as many outcomes that maybe you'd want or expect. But if any change or any adjustment that you're wanting to make is to ask yourself, is it something that I could do for the rest of forever? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably a good change and it's probably a good method or approach.
SMART goals. If everybody knows what that look up the acronym SMART goals. That's like basically what Kylie's talking about.
Do you know the acronym?
Let me think. But yes, let me.
S stands for
small, short.
No, specific.
Specific, measurable, actionable,
achievable.
Kind of the same thing, I guess. Wait. What is the R?
Realistic.
You literally just said that one. Obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Measurable.
And then timely.
Wait, did we already say measurable?
Yeah, that's the M.
And then T, time frame.
Time frame.
Yeah.
I don't know SMART goals very well, apparently.
Great job. Those are SMART goals. And I will also throw out there too, I have people who don't do well with SMART goals. That SMART goals, they feel like if they're so specific and they're so measurable that if they don't follow through with them, then they feel like they're a failure. And so I think giving yourself permission that if SMART goals don't work for you, you can do general goals. And I'll ask people that, do you feel like you do better with specific, like hyper-focused goals, or do you do better with a more general approach of increasing exercise as opposed to I'm going to go on a walk 30 minutes in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so some people do better with different types. And I think SMART goals are a great option, but not a have to if you feel like that doesn't work for you. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what a sustainable change is. So I just wanted to make sure that we define that. But yeah, so I wanted to talk then about, since we've been talking about sustainable changes, when you see people making goals and you're setting goals with these patients that you're seeing, what are some of the biggest mistakes that that people make when they're trying to make a change?
Yeah, good question. I feel like setting too extreme of rules or expectations for themselves. I think people come to me, and as human beings, for some reason, we love rules. I think we love the idea of them, and we love lists, and we love structure. But when it really comes down to it, we actually all have an inner rebellious spirit, and we don't do well with extremes and rules. So I think instead of this rigid mind, focusing on a more flexible approach,
like more forgiving of yourself, kind of.
Yeah. Instead of saying, okay, these are things that I have to do, and if I don't reach them, then I'm a failure. Of more so, okay, most of the time this is my goal, and if I don't hit it, that's okay. Tomorrow's another day.
I felt that with like the gym. Like if I miss a day at the gym, I'm like, well, messed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And then I get demotivated to go
Yeah.
again.
And we'll talk about some of that's a thinking error, black and white, cognitive distortion that we think all or nothing. And like, I have to meet my 30 minutes, X number of days. And if I don't,
Might
it's
as well
all
just
for
give up.
naught.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these two extreme of rules. And I also think when you make goals or when you're in the mindset of goal making, your motivation is really high. So when people come and talk to me, I feel like they're in this like New Year's resolution mindset where they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and do this. And I'll sit down and we'll write down people's thoughts and what their goals are. And then I'll have this huge laundry list of things. And then I'll tell people, okay, I want you to take that and I want you to choose 1 or 2, maybe 3 things to hyper focus on. Because I can guarantee the moment you walk out of my office, life is going to happen and motivation's going to plummet. And we need to be prepared for that and expect that, anticipate setbacks, anticipate challenges, anticipate failures, and find what's going to be the easiest or the most achievable or the simplest thing to continue in, whatever season of life you are right now. I also see people who will bully themselves and feel like self-compassion is being self-indulgent. I mean, if I were to ask you when you are making your own goals and if you don't make that goal, like how do you sound in your head towards yourself?
Yeah, definitely a lot more vicious towards myself than I would ever say to somebody else.
Someone else, yeah.
And that's what I have to always tell myself. Like, I would never say this to somebody else. So why am I saying it about myself? Like, that's such a terrible thing to do to yourself.
Yeah. Our inner critic, we definitely have an inner voice that is very harsh to ourselves. And many people, and I have people that tell me like, I need you to yell at me and I need you to get mad at me. And feel like that, almost like that yelling coach mindset is the thing that can drive us into change. But I mean, there's a lot more research around self-compassion, which again gets confused with being self-indulgent. If I'm being kind with myself and telling myself, oh, it's okay, you didn't exercise, and people think I'm just going to get lazy. But self-compassion actually decreases our cortisol levels and helps decrease stress and can help create this culture or this mindset of this flexible mindset that we're not striving for perfection, we're striving for progress. And that we're imperfect, and through our imperfections, we can find progress.
Nice. Very nice.
And then maybe, the last 2 things that I think would be awesome if we could talk more about today is people fall into a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And we can talk more about that. And then also there are so many different thinking errors or cognitive distortions that can make it really easy for us to lose motivation and kind of just get caught up in our head. And really that's like the thick of the emotional piece of making sustainable change, is staying out of this like downward spiral of some of these cognitive distortions or irrational thought patterns.
Okay. Couple questions, because I don't know what a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset is. Let's start with that first, and then we can talk about the cognitive distortions.
So a fixed mindset is, and I guess for future reference, for those of you who, if this resonates with you, there is a book called, actually I should look it up. It's called Mindset, I believe. It's
quick Google, one moment.
okay, it's called Mindset, an excellent book by Carol Dweck.
Sorry, Carol Dweck, if you ever in a million years listen to this specific podcast.
Why are you saying sorry?
Just in case we said it wrong.
Oh, I don't know how you say her name. Anyway, so a fixed mindset is this mindset of if we don't meet our expectations and we feel like a failure. so, okay, I wasn't able to follow through with this goal. Therefore, I'm a loser. I am a terrible person. I can't do this. And it's very much a mindset, almost like a very harsh and critical judge. We're good, we're bad, we're successes, we're failures. And it's very black and white thinking. So very fixed on certain outcomes and doing things a certain way. And if the outcome isn't achieved, then we are failures. And it's really easy to throw in the towel and get burned out if you stay in this fixed mindset.
So I just want to make sure I have it right. Fixed mindset is black and white thinking, basically. Like you're
good or bad, successful, failures.
And there's no in between.
Saying things like, I can do this or I can't.
Yeah, and there's no room for like any sort of mistakes. And if you make up one mistake, then you're done.
Right. If you slip up, then you are a failure.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas a growth mindset is really focuses on, instead of thinking like, oh, I can't do this, of I can't do this yet. And it's more of an approach that a curious scientist would take, that all of your failures or setbacks are seen as more data points of taking those experiences and learning from them and trying to gather this data and figure out, okay, if that didn't work, how do I need to adjust it? How do I need to change it? Do I need to keep doing it this way? And always striving to be growing, because we learn the best through our mistakes, and it is just data. And this, I actually really like the analogy of using like a harsh judge versus a curious scientist. And so my dad is an organic chemist, so he researches biomedical medications basically. So he creates compounds and then runs them through studies that on the cellular basis, and then they go through animals and then eventually humans. And he has been a chemist, a researcher now, I think it's been 30 years, for really a long time. And I was talking to him once about his career, and he loves research. And I was just asking if it was hard for him. His research has never reached the human level. He's gotten it to animal level, but nothing beyond that.
He's never found a drug that is safe for humans, basically.
Right. And so, I mean, if you think about all the scientists out there and all the medications, and he is also at a university level, I think there's not a lot of funding. And if he were, anyways, but, and so I was asking him like the emotional burden of this, because that seemed to be for me like a really hard thing emotionally to have this career spent on researching something and not quote unquote being successful and having a patented medication with his name on it. And I was talking to him and asking him about his career. He responded in a way of a true scientist. And he said, I don't look at any of my past experiments as failures. And if anything, I'm adding to the science community, I'm adding to the chemistry community, and other scientists and other chemists are building on my own experiments. And all of my failed experiments and failed trials are starting points for someone else, and they're stepping stones for someone else. And it's all data that, 10, 30 years down the road, people are going to take the science that we've been doing today of all these failed experiments and continue to build on it. And that really stuck out to me, of having this growth mindset of looking at our past failures as data of what to build on, what to change, and to not really see them as, in terms of like a failed experiment, it's a failed experiment, but it's still data for what to change and what to do differently to make it better in the future.
It makes me think of that quote by Thomas Edison, something along the lines of like, what is he talking about? Inventing the light bulb. He says,
how many times it took or whatever.
It took me 1,000, like it was 1,000. I didn't fail 1,000 times. It was like 1,000 steps to invent the light bulb or something.
Yeah. And I think that's like what a scientist would look at, or some of these quote unquote failed experiments are necessary. And it's like all part of the experience. And it's just a failed experiment is just as valuable as a successful experiment.
Yeah, it's still data that you've learned.
Yeah.
It's about the journey, not the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. Put that on a t-shirt.
It is a hard mindset to adopt, though, because even you saying that about your dad, like, I don't know. I guess I'm not a true scientist, because I would have a hard time. I with that. And I do have a hard time with that sort of thing where I'm like, oh, I'm not seeing like results like I want to. And it's hard to have that self-compassion or the growth mindset, I guess. So
for sure.
Definitely takes practice. Okay. So you talked about growth minds or fixed mindset versus growth mindset, but what are cognitive distortions? What are some of those?
So have you ever heard of cognitive behavior therapy?
Mm-hmm.
So cognitive behavior therapy, it helps people to build awareness around these different thinking. They call them thinking errors, which I don't really love because it's just how everyone thinks. So different irrational thoughts that sometimes we can have. And we can run through some of these and some examples. And I think first and foremost is building awareness around these for when you are having these. And then we can talk through how to change them and what strategies you can do of how to change them, because these all happen, especially I see these all the time with health. So there's a lot of them. We're going to go through a bunch of them. So black and white thinking, I think that's the most common. So I'm good, I'm bad. Even like food, like this food is good, this food is bad. There's a good day, bad day, as opposed to like really in terms of healthy living and healthy eating, we need to be living in the gray area. Perfect people who live in like one extreme usually have eating disorders. And so like it's good to have
That's very valid.
to have like a general, we talked about this last time, like a pattern, right? There's still going to be all types of foods in a dietary pattern, but avoiding these extremes. So this black and white thinking. Do you ever feel like you fall into black and white thinking?
Yeah, for sure. Just like what I was talking about, like,
maybe
not necessarily with food, but
maybe exercise
with
or
definitely
something.
other things for sure.
Yeah.
Or like sometimes with like in the past, like with schooling where I'm like, oh, like I'm not doing well, like, oh, well, like that sort of thing for sure.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
I think physical activity too. So nutrition, I'll see it, and also physical activity where like we know the recommendation, or maybe we set the goal. So let's say we say 30 minutes, 4 days a week, and it gets to Saturday and we think, screw it. I have 2 more days left and 2 days isn't going to make any difference. So I'm just going to start over on Monday. And that type of thinking, I mean, that is a mental trap. If you were to do those 2 days of movement, that's going to still be helpful. And I think living in this gray area of knowing that anything is still something and avoiding those extremes and that black and white thinking. Okay. The next one is catastrophizing, which I do this a lot. So it's making anything into like a bigger situation. So examples would be like, I didn't have time to work out today. I'm going to lose all of my muscles.
Yeah.
Or I actually talked to people this week it's like spring break time. So people are going on vacation and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to, my diet's going to go out the window and I'm going to lose all this progress. And totally making, which to validate, like those are real feelings. I don't want to diminish all of these feelings because they're real feelings and it can be scary to have these things come up, but to avoid these instant thoughts of like, it's going to be the worst thing ever, and trying to make the best, and to really look at the situation of, okay, we're going on vacation. What do I have control over? What do I not? How long is the vacation? It's going to be a few weeks. There's 52 weeks in a year, 2 weeks out of 50 weeks. That's not going to make a huge difference on my average. Like, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. And
talking yourself down through like this high emotion of making something into a terrible event into like, you're going to be okay. Yeah. Do you ever catastrophize?
Probably. You saying that though, not to like call you out, but I definitely like seem like
Thanks a lot.
that's Kylie.
I do.
I mean, I see you talking yourself down from things a lot.
I
so
do.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm going to say I feel like you don't catastrophize very much. That's definitely one of my
I'm probably a little too chill sometimes.
Yeah,
so.
Spencer and I are very much yin and yang, and I am the catastrophic side.
All good.
Overgeneralization is another one. So viewing a single event as a rule for similar events every time. So example, like I try and exercise and I get injured, and so it must mean that I'm never supposed to exercise. Or every time I try and change my nutrition, I fail. So I might as well give up. And I mean, it's almost just like jumping to conclusions because of past events instead of thinking, again, a growth mindset that this could be different. Mental filters is another one. I see this so often where people only focus on like the bad things. So when I have people come in for follow-ups, I'll ask them, you know, what went well, what didn't, and they always lead with the bad things. Like, okay, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, and just focus on the negatives.
I think we all do that a lot because, like when I'm in a meeting or something similar where they're like, "Oh, what's some positive feedback about yourself?" And it's hard to find it. But when they ask for like negative feedback or they say something that you can do better, it's so easy to think of things.
Well, that's a good example too.
Easier, at least.
When your boss tells you like 6 amazing things that you're doing and then one thing to work on.
That's
and that's
all you think
about.
Only
thing you could think about.
Like, I'm the worst.
Yeah. So identifying those mental filters and really honing in and focusing on the positive that's going on.
Yeah.
Discounting the positive. This is more so I'll see this when I'm trying to like compliment and to also acknowledge and validate the hard work that people are doing. And people all the time will discount it and be like, yeah, well, I'm also doing this and I'm failing at this, instead of saying like, yeah, you're right. Like I'm rocking it in this area. Which I feel like, I don't know. Do you feel like you do that? Discount positives? Or when I feel like you do that. Instead of just saying, thank you, you're right, I am amazing. You're like, oh no.
And that's honestly, I am annoyed at myself that I do that. I think it's like just accept the compliment and move on. Because that's how I feel when other people do it. I'm like, bro, just shut up and just take my compliment.
It's okay. These things make us feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. We're afraid of what we can become.
It's true.
But yeah, really
it's
though.
True.
It's true.
Mind reading is another really big one. This is when we assume that someone else is thinking something. So, and this happens all the time. I feel like in social events where we go and let's say you're getting food and then you think, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me. They're judging what I'm eating. They're judging that I got dessert. And then we're assuming all of these things when in reality, we don't know what people are thinking.
And nobody cares. I think, well, yeah.
I think sometimes people say comments and then can feed some of these thinkings, but most people don't care.
Yeah. Because I noticed myself, especially when I was younger, thinking that sort of thing all the time. Like we have this invisible audience watching us at all times. And as you get older, you start to care a little less, I guess, hopefully. And I always think like, I don't care what any of these other people are doing or what what they're eating, I guess, specifically. So nobody cares about me either. Like nobody's paying attention to me. Like it is all in my head. Like I am not the main character. Like nobody cares. Yeah. So just live your life.
Yeah. So I see that in eating or like the gym. So many people are afraid or don't want to go to the gym because
they're going to be looked at. They think all the time.
And then people look at them and then they think, oh my gosh, they're judging me or thinking this and this when, in reality, we don't know. And maybe they're thinking like, dang, like, what a sexy beast.
And even if they do notice or that they are paying attention, I think that speaks more to their own lack of self-confidence than to you. And
correct.
That's not the kind of person that you'd want to take feedback from anyway, which is obviously easier said than done.
Correct. Yeah.
But
for sure.
Still.
For sure.
Nobody cares, I promise.
Fortune telling is another one. I'll work with people who are trying to like increase the variety of their food, or like really picky eaters. And if they see a food and they tell themselves, oh, this is a green food and I know it's going to be disgusting. And so anticipating that it's going to taste a certain way, or anticipating that something's going to turn out a certain way. Magnification, that's kind of a little bit like catastrophizing. So making smaller things into major issues. Must and should statements. That's a huge one. I had a therapist who said that we need to stop masturbating and shoulding all over ourselves. Excuse the inappropriate joke, but I thought it was, I think anytime that we say that statement of I should be doing this, or I really ought to be doing this, that we need to take a step back and hyperanalyze and really look at, okay, like where are these expectations coming from? Are these realistic expectations? Am I living in this black and white thinking, or is this gray area thinking?
Very good. Very good.
And then these last couple are very much in this mindset of some of the maybe self-deprecating thoughts. So labeling and self-blame. Labeling of, I can't follow these nutritional guidelines. I'm a loser, or I'm a fat pig, or self-blame. Maybe you get diagnosed with a chronic disease, or I don't know, diabetes or something, and think it's all my fault and I'm the one to blame. And those, I think in life, we all have things that we have control over that maybe we're not, doing what we feel like is our best. But that type of thinking can be really detrimental and keep us in that fixed mindset and hyper focus on the negative, and false statements too, that we are all not to blame for what happens to us. There's so many things that go into health, and that labeling, that we tend to live up to the stories that we tell ourselves. So if you're telling yourself that you're a loser and a failure, you're probably, you are setting the bar very low. But if you tell yourself, I can do this, I'm a winner,
you're a star,
I'm a star, you are more likely to live up to whatever the things that you're repeating to yourself. So, in summary, we have black and white thinking, catastrophizing, overgeneralization, mental filters, discounting the positive, jumping to conclusions, mind reading, fortune telling, magnification, should and must statements, labeling, and self-blame as all different types of thinking errors and cognitive distortions. And if you identify with some of those, building your awareness first, building your awareness of that type of thinking. And there's something called catch it, check it, change it, which, have you heard that before? I don't know how common that is.
Nope.
Okay. So catch it, check it, change it is a strategy. Catch it is to identify what the thinking distortion is, to check it with facts that you know, and then to change it or to reframe it. I think reframing it is maybe like the simplified approach. So if we were to use that example of going to the gym and having mind rating, I just went to the gym, everyone's looking at me and they're thinking this and this and this. We catch the thought of, okay, I'm doing mind rating. And then we check it. I don't really know what people are thinking. I don't really know what people are saying. And then we change it, reframe it of, I'm here. I deserve to be here. I deserve to take up the space here. I like working out, and everyone's probably just thinking about themselves. And, but again, being able to build that awareness, because this is not an overnight thing and it takes practice and time. And I always encourage therapy. A therapist is so good at pointing out some of these thinking errors and catching you in that distortion and then helping you reframe it and say it differently. And that can be helpful in your own journey.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, disclaimer, obviously we're not therapists.
Correct.
So, I mean,
far from it.
Yeah. So, like Kylie said, if any of this does stick out to you, definitely go see a therapist. Don't rely on anything we've said. We don't know what we're talking about. We're just here.
Well, we do.
I'm just
somewhat.
kidding. I'm just kidding. We do. And especially Kylie, like she's definitely had a lot of this, but yeah, truly therapy is awesome. I always think about therapy like there's such a a negative mindset around therapy. But to me, it's the same as going to the doctor for a checkup, but for your brain, which is obviously incredibly important. So yeah, therapy is awesome.
Yeah. So if any of this resonates with you, we'd encourage you to look up either workbooks around cognitive behavior therapy or to read the mindset book. And I guess final conclusion, go to therapy because it works.
Yay.
We'll see you next week. If you are listening, we imagine that you are probably on your own health journey. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of this journey. We want to invite you to consider these 3 questions as a weekly personal check-in.
The first question is that maintaining a positive mindset is crucial for success. So, what are your victories and your wins from the past week?
Second question, what are your intentions or focus or goals for this next week? Reminder that the simpler and more realistic, the better.
And the last question is, what are you going to do to accomplish this goal? Be specific, and we invite you to write this down somewhere. What specific things will you do to reach this goal of yours?
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you are listening to, we would invite you to subscribe. We'd also invite you to leave a review. If you do, you will be entered into our monthly drawing to win a box of meal deliveries. Take a screenshot of your review and send it to Complete Nutrition, complete with a K, completenutrition@gmail.com. You can also check us out online at www.complete-nutrition.com or on Instagram at complete_nutrition.